AOC says so many people in this country hate women. Oh, geez. Even the guy at the party who pulls out a guitar is like, way to ruin the fun. Congressman Jamal Bowman says capitalism is slavery by another name. No, it's not. It's the thing that has given more people more prosperity and hope than any other system, flawed though it surely is.
Bill Maher isn't letting up on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and he says there's a reason why. He believes she's being positioned to take over the DNC, and if that actually happens, he thinks the party is in serious trouble.
Something like the free market is kind of synonymous with America. And if you don't like it, I don't know how you can say you love this country. You know who loves this country? You know who's not constantly complaining about what happened 200 years ago and who's not obsessed with seeing America through shit-colored glasses and shaking off the stench of what irredeemable, privileged assholes we are? Immigrants.
Years ago, Bill Maher was throwing up major warning signs about Kamala Harris, but Democrats ignored every single one, pushed forward anyway, and watched the party crash hard in the 2024 election. Now Maher is sounding the alarm all over again. This time, his target is AOC and what he sees as her fantasy-style vision for America. And believe me, Bill Maher isn't holding anything back. He didn't show up with soft criticism. He came ready to burn the whole argument down. So buckle up.
Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet. I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want.
If you've been watching AOC lately, you've probably noticed how closely she's been working with New York mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani, and the messaging has definitely gotten louder. The two recently released a video telling New York parents, no matter their legal status, to sign their kids up for the city's free pre-K and childcare programs. But the bigger debate is about where all of this could lead. Mamdani's campaign has focused heavily on expanding government-funded childcare, and now he's partnering with Governor Kathy Hochul to push those programs even further. Add in his support for abolishing ICE and backing sanctuary city policies, and critics say a larger political pattern is starting to emerge. That's the point Bill Maher keeps driving home. He says he's not against helping families or supporting children. His argument is that America already has social programs designed to soften the rough edges of capitalism without completely replacing it. But when government control keeps expanding, Maher warns it can slowly turn cities into slow-moving bureaucratic systems where everything feels stuck in line and weighed down by red tape.
The DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more. You think you're going to win an election on that? This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal?
If you thought Joe Biden was already too far left, Bill Maher says Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez takes things to a completely different level. Put the two side by side, and Maher argues the contrast becomes obvious pretty quickly. Biden, despite all the criticism around him, still operated more in the moderate lane. He supported looser border policies at times, but there were still rules, limits, and at least some effort to keep things under control. Flawed, sure, but not total chaos by design. Maher sees AOC very differently. He argues that she and her DSA allies don't just tolerate open border-style policies, they actively push for them. Less enforcement, fewer restrictions, and far less caution overall. Where Biden might slow things down when policies become too extreme, Maher believes AOC is much more willing to push even further. That's the divide Maher keeps focusing on. To him, it's not just about policy anymore. It's about two completely different visions of what America should look like moving forward.
Okay, I say the next time we have debates, the moderator needs to frame that question a little differently, as say something about America that you like? Because honestly, I don't know why the people who are fighting for this country so hard even want it anymore.
And that's where Bill Maher says things start to feel a little strange. His question is simple. Why fight so hard to lead a country you always seem angry at? Usually, when people truly care about something, they don't spend every single moment tearing it apart. With AOC, Maher argues the criticism never really stops. It's constant, almost automatic. No matter what happens politically, there always seems to be a new reason for outrage. Whether policies succeed, jobs improve, or the economy picks up, Maher says the response is still more pushback, more criticism, and more frustration. Rarely any pause to admit when something may have actually worked. That's the difference Maher keeps pointing to. Criticizing bad policies is normal, and every politician deserves scrutiny. But he believes there's a major difference between trying to improve a system you still believe in and acting like the entire system is hopelessly broken from the start. One comes across as accountable. The other, he argues, can start sounding more like resentment dressed up as policy. And over time, voters tend to notice that difference even when nobody says it directly.
A country that started out bad and will always be bad, founded on an unrelenting history of sucking, and unable to change. But we have changed a lot. Democrat Cori Bush tweeted, "This land is stolen land and black people still aren't free." And this was on the 4th of July. Really? Not that I give a shit about the 4th of July. I've never been a rah-rah guy. But I am a perspective guy. And that's what too much of the left has lost, perspective.
Bill Maher says the bigger issue becomes impossible to ignore once you notice it. In his view, there's a growing trend on the left to describe America like it's some collapsing nightmare, instead of a flawed but still functioning country. And sometimes, he argues, the rhetoric goes way too far. He points to comments like those from Cori Bush claiming black Americans are not truly free in the United States. Maher believes statements like that move beyond criticism and drift into exaggeration. He says people can absolutely debate inequality, criticize the justice system, and demand reforms. But describing America as completely lacking freedom, while black Americans have become CEOs, members of Congress, Supreme Court justices, and even presidents, starts to sound disconnected from reality in his eyes. That's the pattern Maher keeps warning about. When every political issue gets framed like total societal collapse, and every flaw becomes proof the country is beyond repair, he says the message starts changing. Instead of sounding like people trying to improve America, it begins sounding like people who believe the country is fundamentally hopeless. And once politics starts feeling driven more by contempt than solutions, Maher argues voters eventually pick up on it, whether anyone openly admits it or not.
72% of black people under 30 are optimistic about their future in America. Way more than white people the same age. And as far as the land goes, yes, I guess we could change the name of Captain America to Captain Stolen Land. But honestly, to all the people who start every public event now with one of those land acknowledgments where they say, "I'm standing on land that was stolen from the proud indigenous people of the Chumash tribe," I say either give it back or shut the f***.
Bill Maher takes another shot at what he sees as political theater replacing real policy. His argument is that parts of modern progressive politics have become more about staged messaging than actual change. High emotion, strong symbolism, but very little that shifts real-world outcomes. He often points to land acknowledgments as an example. On the surface, they're meant to recognize indigenous history and show awareness. But his critique is straightforward. After the statement is made, nothing really follows. No policy change, no restitution, no structural shift, just the ritual, and then it's back to normal business. To be clear, he's not questioning whether the history matters. He agrees it does. His concern is whether the performance is starting to replace action. When harm is publicly acknowledged but nothing concrete is done to address it, Maher argues the gesture can start to feel more like branding than reform. That's the core of his frustration. Politics shifting toward optics first, storytelling. In his view, it becomes less about fixing problems and more about appearing to care, while the underlying issues remain largely unchanged.
AOC says so many people in this country hate women. Oh, geez. Even the guy at the party who pulls out a guitar is like, way to ruin the fun. Congressman Jamal Bowman says capitalism is slavery by another name. No, it's not. It's the thing that has given more people more prosperity and hope than any other system, flawed though it surely is.
Here's the blunt version Bill Maher would probably agree with. Where does this America hates women framing even come from? Is it really just 2016 and 2024 being turned into some kind of gender verdict? That argument falls apart pretty quickly under pressure. Most voters aren't running identity calculations in the voting booth. They're focused on everyday concerns, prices, jobs, borders, and stability. Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris didn't lose simply because they were women. They lost because enough voters, fairly or unfairly, didn't trust them with the job at that moment. That's the uncomfortable reality, but also the normal pattern of elections. Wins and losses go both ways. Calling every defeat misogyny flattens a complex outcome into a single storyline and skips over the actual reasons people voted the way they did. And Maher's broader point is simple. When every loss gets rewritten as oppression, there's nothing left to learn from and no real way to fix what went wrong.
But again, something like the free market is kind of synonymous with America. And if you don't like it, I don't know how you can say you love this country. You know who loves this country? You know who's not constantly complaining about what happened 200 years ago and who's not obsessed with seeing America through shit-colored glasses and shaking off the stench of what irredeemable, privileged assholes we are? Immigrants.
Here's the part that stands out in Bill Maher's critique. The tone shifts almost too cleanly depending on who's in power. When Joe Biden was in office, many of the same voices now warning about a collapsing, oppressive America weren't describing the country in those terms. The mood was noticeably calmer and more optimistic. The system was seen as flawed but still broadly working, economy improving, rights holding steady, and progress continuing. Then leadership changes and the framing flips quickly. Same country, same institutions, same everyday life, but now it's often described in far darker language: oppressive, broken, hostile, and in crisis. That's the point Maher keeps circling back to. His argument isn't that criticism is invalid, but that its intensity often seems tied less to objective reality and more to who is in office. And when the narrative swings that sharply in a short time, it raises a question about consistency. Because if things are only working when your side is in charge, and a disaster the moment it isn't, it starts to look less like principle and more like political convenience.
Ask any of them why they came here, and they will tell you the same thing. Ron DeSantis put me on a plane. But they will also tell you that America, for all that's so shitty about it right now, is still the last best hope. And those people asking for our votes to take it over should remember that.
Here's the final point Bill Maher keeps circling back to, and it really comes down to perspective. Some of the loudest voices describing America as fundamentally broken have spent their entire lives inside it. At the same time, many immigrants who have lived under very different systems didn't come here because it's just okay. They came because, compared to what they left behind, it represents opportunity on hard mode. Still difficult, but far better than having none at all. That doesn't mean America is perfect or beyond criticism. It clearly isn't. But there's a real difference between pointing out flaws and rewriting the entire country as if it has no redeeming value and is uniquely oppressive. Maher's argument is that this gap in lived experience matters. When people who have never had to navigate truly limited freedom make the most absolute claims about it, something gets lost in translation. Meanwhile, others who have actually lived that contrast still choose this country as the upgrade. For him, that disconnect says more than any speech ever could.
If she had some deprogramming, she could be such a fantastic candidate.
What do you mean deprogramming?
Well, she just doesn't. She's never going to resonate with people outside of the bubble that she lives in the very, very far left.
So that's the core of Bill Maher's warning, coming from a lifelong liberal who isn't suddenly turning on the party, but trying to pull it back from what he sees as a self-inflicted edge. His point is simple. You can't convince voters you're fit to lead a country if your message sounds like you believe the country is beyond saving. In his view, you don't win people over by amplifying grievances, leaning heavily on symbolism, and framing everything as crisis while offering limited change in everyday life. He argues that AOC and her allies are pushing the party toward a style of politics that's big on emotion and narrative, but weaker on practical grounding. And that's where the risk lies. Whether Democrats take that warning seriously or dismiss it is another question. Maher clearly believes he's seen this pattern before, and he doesn't like where it leads. And with that, we wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.